Hi, welcome here to Magic Makes. This is our very first video. My name is Kevin, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make this in-wall humidor. It's lined with Spanish Red Cedar. Pro tip, this is actually a gift from my father, and if you're going to make someone a gift in your life, you should make it something that you get to use as well.
So to kick this build off, what I'm going to do is measure from the floor upward on one of these two studs you see here to measure out where I sort of want this humidor to be living in the wall. And this is something that's going to be different for everybody depending on the size of your humidor and also the size of yourself. People are different heights, so just pick somewhere that's going to be comfortable for you to reach into the wall. Now, because the floor of this garage is very sloped, I'm going to be coming back with a level to connect this line across the next stud, and not just measure from the floor up on the second stud there. And generally, using a level is a better course of action, always. Now you see me using my stud finder here. That's just to double check and make sure there's no wires or copper pipes in my way or something like that before I cut. Now, I want to cut this with a circular saw, and circular saw blades are offset from the edge of the tool itself. So if you want to use a guide while you're cutting, and I always recommend using a guide while cutting because cutting freehand, is not as safe. You're going to experience more kickback and things like that. So if you're going to use a guide, you're going to have to offset the guide from where you actually want to be cutting. And for my circular saw in particular, I had to offset these lines by about 3¼ inches or so. But different circular saws are going to be different. So don't just go by me. They all look square and good, so now I'm going to come back, put on a mask because I'm going to be making some sawdust, and you want to keep your healthy lungs as healthy as possible, even if you are going to be smoking some cigars. And then you're going to nail these guides right into place, and you just follow the lines you made, and you should be good. And I throw on my AirPods now for a little bit of sound protection. Noise cancellation isn't the best sound protection, but sometimes for longer jobs I like to be listening to music or something at the same time. 2 hands always on the circular saw, just safer that way. And it's always best to make sure your circular saw is fully up to speed before plunging it into something. So take your time and be safe. Now you'll see me come back here with my oscillating tool and finish up those cuts, and I didn't cut all the way on purpose, and that's because I didn't want to accidentally have my circular saw plunge into the neighboring wall panels and make some unsightly marks in them. And the oscillating tool I have much more control over. With that cutting done, I'll come back with my hammer and pry that panel off the wall and the extra guides here. And I'll come back and clean up the sawdust that I made and also those remaining nails in the wall. Now you'll notice that since this portion of the wall panel is now removed, also the nails that were holding it onto the wall are removed with it. So I'm going to come back and not only remove some nails, but also add a few more to make sure the remaining bits of wall on the top and bottom there are really secure. With that done, I'll now gear up to tackle up this fiberglass. Now, fiberglass is pretty nasty stuff. You definitely don't want to breathe it in, and if it gets in your skin, you can become pretty itchy, and if you work with it a lot, you may even develop an allergy to fiberglass. So cover up as much as possible, and then get to work. Actually cutting it is not a big deal. You can use a box cutter like I am, and just, a couple passes here and there. Just take your time. It's pretty easy stuff to cut. Several passes will do fine. Now, I was not expecting this, but when I removed that fiberglass, I was brutally reminded that the wall was actually framed over fairly recently, and the original wall, which is like a non-standard for this area, 24 on center, actually left a stud right in the middle of where I wanted my box to go, and that's kind of a problem. And I didn't want to cut this stud out because it is structural. So I couldn't just go ahead and build a standard drawer box and sort of shove it into the wall, you know, something that looks a little bit like this. But what I could do is build a standard drawer box and, you know, cut some notches out of it for that stud. And unfortunately, I was a little frazzled at this point, so I did forget to film this process in its entirety, but it's a fairly simple box. I'll probably go into more detail on how I build my boxes in another video. But, you know, just cut 2 notches in it, snugly fit it over that stud, and that stud's going to be covered up anyway, because in the next step we're lining it with Spanish Red Cedar, as I mentioned before, and that'll cover it up nicely. And it looks a little something like this. Now, the way I like to put my cedar up on the stud and on the walls here is with a little bit of glue, not too much, and then some nails. And you never want to use too much of substances on things like cedar when you're lining a humidor, because you don't want to use things that might have a smell or odor to them, or that might seep into the cedar itself. And that's because think about a fridge and think about having old smelly food in the fridge. It's going to make your other food smell a little bad and taste a little bad too. And you're smoking these cigars, you're tasting the smoke, and that will probably get into the cigar as well. So avoid using things that have a scent to them as much as possible when building a humidor. The last part of this process is building the door. Now, I have a CNC machine, so I use the CNC machine, but you definitely do not need a CNC router to do this process. All you really need is a hole for your hydrometer to go in. A hydrometer is just a little tool that tells you the humidity inside the humidor. In case you didn't know, cigars like to be at 60 to 70% humidity. It helps them stay fresher and soft longer. And then the only other part of this that's not the hydrometer hole is the cutout for the acrylic that I'm going to be using as a window. And that's essentially just a rectangle with a little recess for the acrylic itself. And that can be done very easily with a jigsaw and a router. Might take you a few hours, but it's not hard, just tedious. And to save myself the trouble, since I have a router, I used it. Alright, let's speed this up. Enough of that. Last bit here is just putting in that hydrometer, gently tapping it with a mallet to not break the glass of it, and then cleaning up these bird edges from the machine with a quick sanding. Now, I didn't go too hard with the sanding because the wall panels that this is supposed to look like around it aren't that well finished either, so you don't want it to stand out too much, at least in my case. And then I'm just working on getting this acrylic to fit nice and snug. And I thought I had designed this door panel in the computer to fit this piece of acrylic specifically, but I guess either I was wrong or the description on Amazon was wrong. Amazon's never really the greatest place to get raw materials, but I am fairly pleased with this acrylic. I will link to a lot of the things I used in the description down below. But this acrylic was very, very clear and you'll see it later when I remove the protective sheet covering off of it. Just a little bit of sanding and a couple cuts on the miter saw made it fit perfectly. Yes, you can use a miter saw to cut acrylic and other plastics, some plastics. Yes, they do sell special saw blades to make that happen. No, I do not own any of those saw blades, but it turned out pretty fine, just a little bit of melting on the edge. It was probably worse off for my blade than it was for the acrylic itself because those edges are going to be covered up anyway, so you know, use what you have, and if it works, it works. After getting that to fit in nice and snug with a little bit more sanding here, I will eventually remove the protective sheet so you can see how clear it is right now. Ooh, so clear. And then I just kind of fit it in, double checked, and then added a little bit of Gorilla Glue to finish it off. Now the Gorilla Glue itself is an expanding glue, and expanding glues require you to clamp your pieces down so they don't move over time. Now I wish I had used more clamps, but I also wish I owned more clamps. So not much I could really do there, but use all the clamps you have. Now with this final part of the process done, the hinges were fairly standard hinges you put on any cabinet door, so I'll jump over that and let's get to the glam shots. Hope you enjoy.
Thanks for watching. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay tuned for more.
You're on. Go.
Oh hey, didn't see you there.
All right, do it again. Do it again.